All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Vanis Babodi. I'm the co-founder of Starburst Accelerator. We are one of the partners involved in implementing the Aviation Accelerator program based in Singapore. And we're really proud to be a part of the Switch conference this week. This is not the first time we've partnered with Switch, but we appreciate that this is a monumental event with a lot of different stakeholders involved, and we're very proud of a lot of the innovation and technology we're seeing in the aviation industry. And we look forward to introducing you to many of the experts from strategic industry on the corporate side, experts to share a lot of the trends and analysis that we're seeing around innovation, entrepreneurship that's happening in the aviation field, especially considering a lot of the challenges we've seen around travel, around the passenger experience, and a lot of the changes we're seeing, especially in the last few months. So it's going to be really interesting to have this dialogue. And what I might do is splash through a slide just to show you the agenda that we'll be going through over the next hour and a half. So we will invite Enterprise Singapore, Chung Ming Law, to provide some opening remarks. And then we're going to move over to some expertise advice from Brendan Sobey, who comes from a pedigree of experience in working in the field in the sector for quite some time. And then Oz will share his insights from Cockpit Aviation, out with working with El Al and other stakeholders out of Israel and bigger. And then Florent from Saffron Ventures, one of the leading OEMs in the field, has joined us to talk about the investments that they're making. Before we transition into the panel discussion, where we'll have Changi Airports International, Sher Khan, Eric from GE Ventures, Professor Lam from NTU, and Jerome from IA to speak about some of the trends we're seeing, as well as what to expect as part of our aviation incubator program. So with that, Chung Ming, I'd like to invite you to share your screen, and please take it away and share some of the, we're very proud to be working with you all, and maybe the role of Enterprise Singapore and how you've seen kind of the trends in the industry change. Please.
Thanks, Van. Hello, everybody. It's really great to join all of you this afternoon. Today's webinar with the topic on the aviation industry and where we are headed next comes very timely during this very challenging and difficult COVID-19 period. Now, while this is a really challenging time for all businesses, especially I feel that for the aviation sector, it has been very hard hit. However, I also think that this is a very good opportunity for all of us, aviation companies and startups, to really rethink our business models and our operational processes, including how we can leverage better on innovation and technology to ensure business continuity in a post-COVID world. I think startups, like all businesses, are actually going through a very difficult period now. In a global survey conducted by Startup Genome, more than 40% of startups are struggling with 3 months or less of cash runway. And I think nearly 20% of the startups that had a term sheet before the onset of the crisis have seen the term sheet put back by their potential investors. And I think more than half of the startups surveyed are also seeing lesser deal flows from investors who have actually turned more cautious during this period. Now, while the global economy slows, I really feel that we should not let this be a reason to stop innovating and stop us from really growing the spirit of entrepreneurship. Now, with the pace of technology disrupting the way that businesses are run, Singapore recognizes the need to actually quickly integrate the use of innovation and technology into the aviation ecosystem. And for this reason, Enterprise Singapore has supported Starburst to launch its inaugural Asia Aviation Accelerator program in Singapore in September this year. And I think the first run will be starting in early 2021, and we are really looking forward to it. Now, this acceleration program will offer opportunities for all stakeholders, such as startups, airlines, ground handlers, and other companies in the aviation ecosystem to collaborate with each other and work together partner together to solve industry-wide challenges. While the COVID-19 pandemic has induced great pressure on the startups, but we are still optimistic that there remains opportunities abound in Singapore and in Asia. And I think let's look at a few things that we can be optimistic about. I think international accolades continue to be bestowed on Singapore. We are ranked the most innovative country in Asia based on the Global Innovation Index 2020. We provide one of the best business environment in Asia. Our economic competitiveness, combined with the ease of conducting business, transparency, and reputational trust, will allow startups to leverage on Singapore as a base for operations when they are making inroads into the region. We are also ranked as the 17th position for global startup ecosystem based on Startup Genome 2020 Global Startup Ecosystem Report, where Singapore's local connectedness was identified as one of our strongest traits. Another clear indicator is the participation of global startup in this year's edition of Slingshot, which is an international deep tech startup competition held as part of Switch, where we are all part of now. Now, despite the COVID-19 situation, Slingshot received a record number of more than 7,500 applications from 159 countries around the world. Now, this reflects the continued interest of startups around the world, in Singapore, in Asia, and a lot hinges on our reputation and one of the best business environment in Asia. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced aviation industry players to rethink their approach towards seeking opportunities for fresh and innovative solutions to reduce net costs while developing new capabilities and spurring transformation. The air transport industry will require support from all stakeholders of the ecosystem, be it corporates, investors, accelerators, innovation platforms, or public agencies like Enterprise Singapore, Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, to recover and thrive in a post-COVID-19 world. Enterprise Singapore, we are doing our part by providing both financial and non-financial support to aviation companies and startups to encourage open innovation and collaboration in the transport and logistics space. The Trade and Connectivity Challenge 2020, which is the second run of this challenge, was launched early this year. And we brought together global startups and corporates across the aviation, maritime, mobility, logistics, and trade sectors to address business operational needs, pain points, and challenges faced by the industry. Now, we are happy to share that TCC 2020 received close to 140 submissions from countries around the world, up from about 50 received in 2019. We are very much encouraged by the strong response, and we are not stopping there. In fact, we also launched the inaugural E-commerce Supply Chain Challenge 2020 in October this year as part of Singapore's National Innovation Challenges. Now, the E-commerce Supply Chain Challenge 2020 features our leading e-commerce industry partners such as Ninja Van, SATS, Singapore Post, and we aim to develop industry-led solutions to solve real challenges through innovative partnerships between startups, SMEs, and large corporations. Each challenge statement is slated to be awarded up to $2 million in co-funding support to actualize the proposals put forth by the industry. So today, we are happy to say that we have received more than 20 submissions from startups around the world. Now, platforms such as TCC and the ESCC highlight the opportunities that technology and innovation can bring, following the disruption to trade and connectivity sector caused by the COVID pandemic. ESG will continue and is committed to provide our support to the industry, to companies, and to startups in Singapore to allay their concerns during this difficult period. And today's platform, such as this fantastic webinar organized by Starburst, is part and parcel of our work to bring together industry captains and thought leaders like yourself to exchange and to share views on where the aviation sector is headed next. Now, in closing, I'd like to share that in Chinese, there's the word crisis or 危机 comprises two characters. One which represents danger and the other one represents opportunity. In a crisis, we definitely need to be aware of the clear and present danger, but we also need to recognize and be cognizant of the opportunities. I can only say fortune favors the bold. I'm confident that all participants today will stand to gain from the valuable insights from all the distinguished experts and speakers that are present today. And I wish everybody a fantastic and a fruitful time this afternoon. And with that, thank you very much. Back to you, Van.
I love it. Thank you. And I'm a big fan of that Sun Tzu quote that is opportunities multiply as they are seized. So I imagine that is very relevant in this regard. Thank you, Chengming. We are big fans of Enterprise Singapore and ESG, continue to play a powerful role in supporting entrepreneurship and investing, not just in Singapore, for the broader region and of all of our global activities and the countries that we operate in, making sure all that aviation talent and innovation is coming to Singapore and championing that for the rest of the world. So thank you. With that, I'd like to invite Brendan Sobey to join us next and provide his outlook on where are things happening with regards to the air transport sector. Please, Brendan, unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to provide a brief overview and outlook of the aviation sector here in Singapore and regionally in Asia. It's obviously an extremely challenging time for the industry. And I agree a lot with what Chengming was saying just now. It's really about, there's so much opportunity, there's so much potential to use this crisis to help reset the industry. And the key is really collaboration between all the different stakeholders and the different companies, from airlines to airports, technology companies and other types of suppliers, governments, etc. Right now, there's a lot of financial strain, not only on startups, but across the ecosystem. Airlines, a lot of airlines barely have any cash left, and there's been a lot of reports about the difficulties that airlines are facing. And even though we see now a light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine news recently, and certainly things are going to get better next year gradually, we still have a very long road ahead of us in terms of recovery. And so it's going to take a lot of effort by a lot of different stakeholders to position this industry to better in the future in terms of financial situation, as well as from an innovation and technology perspective. So there's the debt is piling up with airlines, for example, and it's very difficult to invest. However, it's also critical to invest in this period because the industry is changing, the world is changing, and if you don't change, your ability to survive will diminish even further. And that's what's the kind of this critical juncture we are in this industry across the ecosystem from all sorts of companies that participate in this industry. The outlook, like I just said, we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's been a very long tunnel, and the recovery in 2021, it won't be immediate. It will be very gradual. It will be very choppy. And it will take a few years for the industry to fully recover. This year, obviously, 2020 has been almost a complete write-off, and it's been a very dismal year for airlines and the industry overall. Here in Asia, international passenger traffic is still down 98%, and has been down in that 98 to 99% level since April. So 9 months of a decline of 98, 99%, which is just unheard of, obviously. And globally, situation has not been much better, but Asia has been very slow in reopening borders and in resuming international travel, and that has hurt Asia more so than even at some other regions, and particularly markets that rely on international travel and don't have a domestic market, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong, that the impact has been even more severe. And there is some domestic travel in Asia, of course, but once you exclude China, and it's important to when you're looking at figures for Asia to kind of exclude China from the rest of Asia, because China obviously has recovered fully. Much to their credit, they've been able to contain the virus very well, and the domestic market there is very large and robust and back to normal. But once you take that out from the rest of Asia, the situation is much more dire. Domestic traffic, on average, is about only 50% recovered. It varies a lot from country to country, and the revenue of domestic is just not big enough to sustain the industry, whether you're an airline, you're an airport, or anybody else. The reason is that domestic travel tends to be very low fare, competition is intense. It's just not enough to cover even variable costs in many cases, but certainly not fixed costs, with the exception of China, again, which has a much bigger domestic market than anybody else in Asia. So from that backdrop, we have a long road to recover our air traffic numbers here in Asia Pacific, excluding China. And it will happen very slowly next year as international travel gradually comes back. There's some hope that air travel bubbles and other mechanisms will improve the situation in the kind of the pre-vaccine phase. And I'm still cautiously optimistic that some of these air travel bubbles can happen in the first half of next year. But it won't be a significant amount of traffic that they will generate. So we still will be down, over 90% in terms of international traffic probably for the first half of next year. And even once the vaccine starts to get distributed, it's going to take a long time for the vaccine to be distributed through all the countries, and for a majority of the population to be vaccinated. It could take even years potentially. A lot is unknown about that, and how to actually restart travel in a post-vaccine environment in terms of immunity passports and all this sort. A lot of work actually has to be done on the technology side still to facilitate that, and that's where a lot of the opportunities are on the technology side, as well as of course on a lot of the areas like digitalization, which was a trend in the airline industry already, but it's really accelerated this year. And it continues to accelerate because of this pandemic, and I think that won't go away. That's going to continue, and there's going to be more opportunities, I think, over the next few years as the industry starts to recover in more significant numbers, and the industry will look a lot different than it did in 2019. There will be a lot of changes in terms of business models, adjustments in terms of strategies. The airline industry is kind of overdue a big change, and it changes very slowly normally, but in this environment there's really no choice but to change at a much faster pace, and that's where the innovation and the collaboration with everyone in the ecosystem must happen, and we're just kind of at the beginning of that. This is going to be a few years really of very tech focused transformation of the industry, as well as a few years of financial recovery, unfortunately, and recovery of traffic. So it's all happening at the same time, and it's going to be an interesting period. But if everybody gets together and works together, and we are able to successfully incubate some of the technologies that that are available here, in Singapore and around the world, then we will be in a much better position, say 3-4 years from now, as an industry. And very much look forward to this dialogue today. On some of those technologies, and continuing to work with Starburst going forward in this really critical period for the industry. So thank you for allowing me to provide a brief overview, and best of luck for the rest of the session.
Thank you, Brendan. Really appreciate your insights and helping kind of set the scene. So something that Starburst really is trying to bring now into this discussion is bringing some of the strategic elements of industry and who's been really driving that. Airlines in particular have obviously taken a big hit, but it's interesting to see what they're thinking about. So with that, I'd like to invite Oz, who's the investment director at Cockpit Innovation, which is a venture fund and corporate innovation hub founded by El Al Airlines. with shareholders such as Boeing, Gate Group. Oz, please, if you can share your screen, dive in and tell us a little bit more about what activities you've been seeing, what you've been building around commercialization, and where you see some interesting opportunities and we're collaborating with startups.
Sure. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. I will talk a bit about the aviation perspective and give examples from our portfolio. Our portfolio is mainly focused on aviation, air travel, and space, but our partners are Gate Group, which is aviation catering, Boeing as well, and of course, El Al. So we all know that airlines and the travel industry took the biggest hit, the first one to hit, and probably the last one to recover. And it's very hard to imagine opportunities in this space. And you know that most airlines, let's say, are not ahead of the curve when it comes to innovation. No sense, it's a traditional business based mostly on traditional business models. And the pandemic probably accelerated innovation in every industry. And of course, it's expected that airlines will follow as well. So we've been spending the last 5 years or so investing in aviation and travel disruptors. So we see realization, let's say, from the aviation industry that digital innovation is not a nice to have anymore, but should lead airline thinking basically in every aspect. So, of course, currently airlines are focused on short-term impacts, more on survival. And but let's say the pandemic are exposing different sides and also forcing us to look at, let's say, the longer term. So in the short term, airlines focusing, as we see it, mostly on regaining travelers' confidence, on improved operations, and digital experience. But regarding the long-term effects, what changed the most, we think, is the realization that this event might happen again. So this forces us, airlines, to rebuild business model and vision to be more flexible, agile, and of course, leveraging real-time data probably in every aspect. So we think that for startups, in this realization that might happen again, lies the big opportunity in aviation and for the travel industry as a whole. So in this time, we see incumbents are focusing on returning to normal and not on innovation. We can say that. But this is exactly the time for startups to move quickly and benefit from this opportunity. What we do in our fund is basically monitor our portfolio companies very closely, help them more than ever, I can say, and help them find opportunities in our corporates, in El Al, in Gate Group, and the understanding that funding now is crucial. So we do, of course, bet on the winners, do follow-on rounds. And it's a hard task, let's say, to find who can leverage this situation in their industries, but also in other industries as well, and to help them grow. Try to find new opportunities, and to be flexible and think out of the box. Opportunities like consolidation, M&A opportunities, which we see in our portfolio, finding new markets, leveraging new research methods even to find new markets, and overall be better positioned to take over now and to be prepared when the market regains traction. So in our portfolio, I will give you an example. One of our portfolio companies, which is an innovative OTA, acquired struggling, let's say, competitor in an auction. And after 1 month of integration, onboarding, more than doubled in sales. It's amazing, and this company is it just keeps on growing. So this is an opportunity that, if not for this situation, won't happen in any other situation. Another company completed an acquisition to a large corporate travel management company, and in another, we did a follow-on round and also focused heavily on implementation and working with Elal, which worked very well and opened also other airlines to work with this company as well. So basically, what we need to do now as innovation arm, investment fund, is to focus on our existing portfolio companies, but of course, looking at other opportunities as well. And in that regard, we look on opportunities in food tech, and trying to find the best solutions for Gate Group, our shareholders, and we believe that this pandemic might be a great opportunity. So we also invite entrepreneurs to approach us as well. And thank you for listening, and good luck for everyone.
Thank you, Oz. That's great. I think it's really important to shine that light on some of the successes that you've seen in this difficult period. So I'm really pleased to hear some of the traction you've been getting and how that's been affecting some of the companies in your portfolio. So very good. Okay. So moving next, I think I want to shift away from thinking about the airline directly and the sort of the passenger experience and the innovation you're seeing around food tech. And I want to invite Florent to join us. And for those of you that don't know, Florent is Director General, CEO of Saffron Corporate Ventures. He specifically comes with a private equity background, or analyst in equity capital markets at Societe Generale, and joined the Paris office of McKinsey in 2006 as a strategy consultant. Maybe I want to emphasize a little bit more around the technology side of the engine side and many other capabilities that Saffron has been continuing to champion as a leader in the aviation industry. So with that, please, Florent, the floor is yours if you want to unmute and speak.
Thanks. Thanks, Van. Yeah, so it has been a weird year for everyone, and Saffron is not an exception for that. So Saffron Corporate Ventures is the dedicated arm of Saffron Group, dedicated to minority investments in breakthrough and disruptive technology companies all around the world. We have a global scope. We really, tend to focus on early stage companies, so the ones that are sometimes the riskier, but also the most able to potentially disrupt what we do. And what we do is a pretty wide, actually, scope of things. Saffron being a provider of equipments and engines from the nose to the tail of a plane. And with the acquisition of the Zodiac activities back in 2018, we now operate also everything related to the interior of the planes. So that's a whole new range of topics, from in-flight entertainment and connectivity to connected cabins, next generation toilets, and the likes. What has been happening this year at our level was actually two phases. kind of crisis. The first one, beginning of the year, I mean, in March, April, May, I would say, was really the shock of what was happening and the impacts it was having on our operations. I mean, I agree with Oz, who said previously that the airlines were the first impacted, and I fully agree with that. But shortly after, it poured down on all the other stakeholders in the industry, and we were very quick to actually be impacted also, and realize that things were changing at a fast pace. And at that moment, it was pretty difficult to even find someone willing to speak about, you know, next generation engines and or the technologies of 2030 or 2035. But what happened this year, pretty quickly actually, after maybe a couple of months, is that everybody, you know, really swallowed the pill of the pandemic and started to think about the long term. And that's what Oz was saying. I think it is also an acceleration of the thinking that everybody is having in the industry around how are we going to fly in 2030, 2050. In our situation as an OEM and engine manufacturer, that means thinking about what's next in terms of propulsion and aircraft engines. I think that, I mean, it's very funny to notice that despite the biggest crisis in this industry for decades or ever, the ambition for the decarbonation of aviation is actually even more ambitious now than it was beginning of 2020. And we are not talking about, you know, full decarbonation, not in 2050, but in 2035. So that's a 15 years of acceleration. That has a lot of consequences for us, obviously, given the lead time that it takes to design new engines and to develop a full stack program, and that means that we need to start right now, and that has really been a shift on how me and the team at Saffron Ventures are prioritizing our topics. And I must say that we spent quite some time this year working on sustainable aviation fuels, for example, which were not that much of a priority in 2019. Hydrogen topics are really becoming key for us, and we're spending a lot of time on that. Biofuel also, everything related to all these new ways of making a plane fly is really, I would say, number one on the list of things that we're discussing around us. It's not an easy task as a corporate ventures to work on that, because as you may imagine, these are pretty much moonshots type of ventures and opportunities. So that requires the ability to do big bets and to really accept the fact that some of these bets could be actually a loss at the end of the day. But this is an exciting opportunity to be in that position and to be able to do these investments. The other priority actually that's emerged from this crisis, and I think that's true for all the big industrial players around the world, not only in the aviation industry, is the digitalization of our operations, of our industrial operations. Everybody have noticed the impact that this pandemic has had on the way we operate our plants, our manufacturing plants and operations. And I agree with Oz, we need to prepare for maybe another one of these black swan events. What does it mean for us? How if we had new years before, what would we have done differently in terms of new plants, new way of building engines? Is it more automatization? Is it augmented reality? Is it AR, VR? Is it a big change in the way we think about these operations? And I think these are, in a weird way, these are very, very exciting times for an entrepreneur or early stage investors to be in that sector. We all know that crises have historically been the best time to build amazing company, these moonshot companies I was mentioning, and I think that's this period is not different. There is no difference for that. I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs betting on the long term, with a 10-year horizon, knowing that they will be supported by companies all around the world and big corporates that needs to find ways to compensate the reduction in their R&D budget, for example. That's something that has been happening everywhere in the aerospace and defense industry for the big groups. Most of them have been forced to actually reduce their R&D budget, at least for the next 2 years. These kind of things have impacts in the long term, and that's why a lot of them actually have been pretty active in the corporate ventures side in 2020. I was looking at the numbers a week ago. Airbus Ventures, Lockheed Ventures, Honeywell, us. Most of the corporate ventures in big groups have been extremely active in 2020, and I think that's also a way to give hope to everyone here. This is changing times. This is a challenging time, but it's also a time of big changes, and where there are big changes, there are big opportunities. So very, very happy to be here. Saffron is more and more willing and eager to partner with with innovative players in Asia. Actually, I should have spent. Normally, I should have been in Asia this year. Unfortunately, it was not possible, but we will be there in 2021, hopefully. And very happy to meet you all in person as soon as possible.
Florent, thank you very much. Really appreciate you countering the sort of passenger side of that to more on the OEM supply side and equipage, and thinking about just in industry from that perspective, from that. So really, thank you for bringing some of your experience and sharing kind of from that strategic mindset where you see those opportunities. And that, again, this is a ripe time, and it's not, the airlines aren't alone. The industry is backing this, and we're seeing a lot of incredible opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. Next, we're gonna change things up a little. We're gonna invite. I'm gonna introduce each panelist to share their screens, but I'm gonna do a quick introduction. So we're gonna do a panel, and I'd like to invite Chris Lee from AirLab. Chris is the Deputy Director of AirLab, which is part of Thales and CAS. He's one of the founding members and leads their strategic and ecosystem partnerships between AirLab with local partners and stakeholders. He was also the partnerships director in a local blockchain startup. Next, I'd like to invite Sher Khan from Changi Airports International, one of the lead consultants. Sher has 25 years of experience in unique coverage of different aspects of the aviation industry. He's currently heading the consulting arm of Changi Airports International, which many of you may not know, but has operations from in all sorts of unexpected parts of the world, whose primary task is to provide technical support to the airport assets under Changi Airport International's management and third-party consulting practices across airport operations, commercialization, economics forecasting, and traffic development. Finally, Eric, thanks for jumping in from GE Ventures, Eric Belke. and early alpha partners. Eric focuses on enterprise software investments with particular focus on clean tech and aerospace. Eric was a partner at GE Ventures, where he served on the boards of a few different companies, including Desktop Metal, which has had a lot of press lately. Finally, Professor Lam from Nanyang Technopreneurship Center, and part of NTU. He's in the computer science department, leading a lot of their engineering and director of a lot of the NTU's kind of entrepreneurship activities. And you can talk about maybe a little bit some of the perspective you had on the startup side. Finally, Jerome from Singapore Airlines, Jerome Thiel, he serves as the VP for Digital Innovation in Singapore Airlines, bringing a proven track record of entrepreneurship and innovation spanning startups and multinational organizations across Europe and Asia, having also been a CEO of a number of startups, which he had founded and grown and sold with a few successful exits. And I'll be moderating the discussion. So I'd like to invite each panelist that I just introduced to, actually first, Chris, maybe what I'll do is invite yourself to share your screen. And if I could ask, how do you foresee AirLab could work with startups when you think about suitable technology fits and how it addresses your use cases from proof of concept to implementation all the way to scaling up?
Yeah, thanks, Van. Thanks for having me. So pertaining to this question, I mean, just to jump back a bit on the history, since we started in 2019, we've been working on this open air traffic management, or we call ATM platform, proof of concept, to provide us with the architecture to work with startups and also to help us accelerate the innovation on advanced technologies for air traffic management via APIs. So in July this year, amidst the pandemic, we managed to launch this platform with the APIs published on our website. This way, our partners will be able to extract data for air traffic management via our open APIs for processing in their capabilities. Our intention is really to invite potential partners like startups to work with us to prove the integration of their capabilities using our APIs. This is done by working on suitable use cases that are relevant to the ATM domain. So we have also started work with Starburst to explore use cases on the Accelerator program with startups. Right now, we are actually working on possible mechanisms to scale up successful POCs. What we are offering in AirLab can be an opportunity for startups that are willing to partner us to be part of Singapore's own ATM ecosystem. And whatever we do in AirLab in Singapore today can be scaled at a global level because Thales operate our businesses globally.
I'm actually kind of sensitive to aerospace and air navigation services, so I'm really excited to see that you guys are really driving that. Can you share a little bit more about the type of sort of criteria that you guys are using to assess these companies around whether or not you want to invest in them potentially, what technology you're looking at, what customers they have traction with? How do you start to define that criteria?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be very frank, at this point, we are also learning and exploring possible partnerships with startups. So, as you know, the modality in AirLab is pretty new for both Thales and CAS. So, we are also looking internally on what are the needs and possibilities we can offer or needs to be considered from both organizations when it comes to working with startups. So, there are typical examples like IPs and different types of proof of concept and what technologies they are using. However, the focus for us now is really to explore the capabilities out there that can be integrated on our platform to provide new features for air traffic management system. So in general, we are rather agnostic when it comes to capabilities, so long as the startup can demonstrate that they can integrate these capabilities on our APIs. Of course, demonstrating useful use cases such as using AI or even speech recognition to reduce the workload of controllers, as we have demonstrated this year in the air show in Singapore, what we call the digital assistant. Essentially, it works like a Siri. So it took off some of the manual work from controllers to allow them to focus on more intensive work that requires their own personal judgment. But I'm sure we will mature in our collaboration models as time goes, and there will be capabilities that we want to focus on the platform as we work on more partnership. So I would say that now is the best opportunity for startups who are interested to work with us. to actually explore these innovative technologies on the platform.
And before I move to Sher Khan, I wanted to ask one last question. What happens after? Where do you see after the completion of some of these companies that are offering these capabilities? What's next for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we when we started, this question popped up quite a bit, a lot of times. But we're pretty excited on what an open architecture can bring us, to be frank, and also in terms of what types of collaboration we can work on an open platform, such as software as a service. While we have seen the potential that this has brought to bear by other open platforms, we want to replicate the success of these platforms as far as possible when it comes to working with startups. The motivation for partnerships with startups now is really to kickstart in working on something together and to build that working relationship and trust before we discuss on the next steps. Nonetheless, I mean, like I mentioned earlier on, we are working on the details in parallel on what's after, and we hope to be able to share more in the upcoming year during our engagement sessions.
Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights on this. Cheers.
Thanks, Ben.
Mr. Khan, I'd like to invite you to share your screen, please. And really, Chengi brings a different perspective, obviously known as one of the most successful, innovative leaders from an airport operations perspective, but you've specifically been trying to take a lot of these lessons learned. And so I'm really curious if you can share a little bit more about the journey in how you want the business to embrace technology and how you identify them and how you go through that selection process.
Yes, so good afternoon and thanks, Ben. Thanks for your glowing introduction also. So as airport leaders acknowledge that business success is not just about deploying technologies. Instead, success is about transforming the business of airports, understanding our customers, the needs of the community and the culture, and leveraging existing and new technologies to meet specific objectives and goals. One of the things that I see in the market is that, is everything that could be done is already done. Unfortunately, the aviation industry has been slow because we have been highly regulated and there have been little incentive to change in the past. But the crisis has changed all that. I think Chung Ming, Brendan, and a lot of the speakers have actually put that this is the time for change. So at Changi Airport, as we continue to strive to be one of the best airports in the world, we continually find and develop new solutions in the field of safety, security, operational efficiency, productivity, passenger experience, and retail effectiveness. So these are the areas that we look at. And in our search of new technologies, it normally stems from a specific problem or challenge that we want to actually meet. So generally, we've gone into 3 different modes of searching for a solution. Number 1, externally, we utilize scouts in the different areas. We do work with organizations and national accelerators like A-Star. Secondly, we also do build our own internal capabilities. So we have a successful venture with Accelerator now in order to build internal products. And thirdly, with the additional headcounts and downtime, we are also involved in a lot of experimentation within the airport. So this has allowed us actually to look at possible new solutions that can be implemented. And for example, Changi Airport has also participated in hackathons, which have specific themes or specific use case that we want to actually address. So there's been quite a number of forums externally and internally that we have actually gone on this journey in order to find solutions to specific problems that we have.
Can you share a little bit more about how you take the success cases and extend them into the international operations? Like maybe share a little bit more about some of the successes you've seen with some of the international airports under your management?
Yeah, so actually the journey is fairly new for us. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to extend a lot of these solutions to the other international airports that we either manage or consult with. A lot of the solutions, so maybe I'll break it up into different areas. But first, the consideration that we actually look at, number one, we look at whether the solutions that we already have is relevant to the airport needs, because different airports having different size and different domestic, international have different needs. Number two is the cost effort. As you are fairly aware, Changi do strive to have the gold standard of the industry, and we do have sometimes a fairly expensive solution that may not be applicable in smaller airports. Of course, the number three is the readiness for the airports to accept the solution. For example, a certain solution requires certain infrastructure in the background, for example, data resource management system and so on, which may not exist in certain of these airports. And of course, lastly, there are issues of regulation. So just one example, which we actually work with a local SME together with ESG, is to do MVP for a certain product to measure queue times. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were unable to deploy it in the intended subject, because we were supposed to fly and the borders were closed just about a few weeks before that. But overall, we look at what we have and see whether we could extend it overseas, or we look at trying to see how we can customize it for an overseas market, or in some cases, which is something that we are doing now, we're actually creating our own product. So in all three areas, these are areas that we are working on, and there are a lot of opportunities to work with companies, startups, and vendors out there.
I really admire that. I think it is prudent to have the parallel activities kind of pushing on all fronts and being much more tactical and selective in terms of where the right applications are. So it makes complete sense. Thank you. And we really look forward to finding more ways to work with yourselves and continuing to accelerate these technology adoptions across your operations and working with you more. Thank you, Sherkan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ben. I'm happy to be here.
Cheers. Eric, I'd like to invite you to join us next. I mentioned Eric is with GE Ventures. Obviously, the company has gone through fascinating changes over the years. Eric, can you hear me? Mic check.
Yeah, I can hear you, Van. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. So, terrific. Eric, you and I can get a bit cerebral on these things sometimes, but maybe I just want to try and simplify it. And I think you've seen some incredible you and I have worked together for quite some time. So I just want to maybe have you share a little bit more about what you consider to be key investment parameters in the role of a corporate venture capital arm.
Yeah, I'd say one of the truisms of corporate venture capital is that it's evolved to be a lot more like, the traditional parameters that any early stage investor would look at. There was a time, I think, back in the 80s when people were kind of experimenting with corporate VC. It was sort of a pre-M&A exercise, and so you really looked for businesses that could be absorbed into the larger enterprise within a typical VC span, right, 3 to 5 years, or even a little bit longer. I think it's evolved from that time now that it's quite commonplace for corporations to have a venture capital arm to be thinking about the parameters being essentially, we want to return as much capital as we can back to the enterprise. And if we get some strategic benefit alongside it, that's great. I think of really the financial parameters being, three things, right? It's moat, market, and team. And, moat, we would define as being able to defend your margins. Do you have a useful enough network effect or a capability built around the business that doesn't lend itself to competition? And then the market size, almost defines itself, right? That's aiming for a market where a $1 billion company doesn't create so much tension or create so much disruption that it either invites competition or can't be supported by the size of the market that it's going after, and so it's not too much share. And then the third around team is, any organization wants to to any investment organization wants to back a team that has the capability of growing up with the organization, and when spans and layers become a necessary part of managing the professional business, it doesn't mean that there's a need to swap out key executives, right? You're looking for a team that can grow to that kind of scale and learn, all the attributes of managing a larger enterprise along the way. I'd say that's the definition of the financial parameters. The strategic parameters, they really vary by organization, but we've traditionally looked for three things. It's either the ability to disrupt an existing business line. If you take an example, in the aerospace industry, GE is a very large manufacturer of aeroderivative turbines, and probably that has been one of the best performing businesses, I'd say, of GE for the last 20, 30 years. But aeroderivative turbines are under a current disruption threat by electric vertical takeoff and landing, alternative electric motors. So a company like Joby or Lilium or Volocopter, these are probably some of the better known names in the eVTOL space. That would be a very logical bet for a corporate venture group like GE to take. The second would be, does the business have the ability to add value? That's either buying from them or selling to them. And if you take a case like Desktop Metal, it's an additive manufacturing company that provides printers that are small enough form factor that they can be used for rapid prototyping, or they're actually capable of making high precision parts that can create shapes that are actually quite difficult to do with a traditional casting process. That's the sort of technology that GE could potentially buy a lot of. And so there's a very natural partnership with a company like that. I'd say that the third way that there can be strategic value is if the business is creating a new market. So, for example, Spire is a satellite company that has taken what has traditionally been very large, expensive satellites and reduced their form factor to monitor radio waves around the radio frequencies around the world. And what that's done is it's created this new market for communications with things that used to not have a means of relaying either their location or getting information back. And for aircraft, that's quite relevant. It means I think all know the situation with Malaysian Airlines some years ago was unfortunate, and a lot of that was due to the inability to communicate in real time with the base station. And so GE would get behind a company like that, creating a whole new communications market that's adjacent to the aerospace industry.
I really resonate with the Spire one. I know because they also have been trying to come in as sort of a space-based ADS-B provider. So flight tracking from space, fascinating topic. But before I let you go, I want to just maybe expand on that. What advice do you have for the not traditional, but kind of pure venture capitalists who don't bring that strategic element, and you think kind of need that kind of education, or inviting them to say, here are that many more exciting opportunities for you to participate in the aviation sector?
Yeah, I mean, advice to startups could be a lot of different things, but I would say there's probably a couple of things that spring to mind, especially for startups that are working in the aerospace industry. The first thing is it's often the case that with corporate venture groups, there's a desire to look for companies that are already producing revenue, that already have a substantial amount of de-risking. And I'd say, at least in the case of the GE organization, I think increasingly true across the industry, there's an appreciation for the fact that revenue is just one way of looking at de-risking. The proof points can come in having a prototype that's ready to go, having a meaningful customer that's on contract but hasn't paid yet. And in the U.S., the Defense Department or the Air Force has been a remarkable customer, I think, for companies that are building a novel enough technology that they're taking the lead kind of in that de-risking on the financial side. And so companies that are able to to showcase that moat, market, and team without necessarily having that de-risking, I'd say my advice would be, have the conversation now. Don't kind of wait until those classical financial metrics are being hit before having a conversation with a corporate VC. And the other part of the advice, I think, would be, this is one of the most exciting times in aerospace. We've seen disruption. I think it's been mentioned by my fellow panelists, Sher Khan and Chris, that there's a lot of novel innovation in the passenger experience, from speed to how passengers kind of interact with everything from the airport to the in-flight experience. There's a tremendous amount of disruption happening around electrification and alternative fuels. And then maybe the most impactful trend right now is around autonomy. These kind of create this degree of turbulence in the industry that has probably been unprecedented in the decades prior. So, it's a general note to entrepreneurs that are thinking about the space. It's a super exciting time to get in, since nobody knows how this plays out, including the relatively well-established incumbents.
Eric, really appreciate you being a champ and coming in at the odd hours. Thank you so much for your feedback and advice. Always welcome, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Van.
All right, so Jerome, I'd like to bring it back to an airline perspective. If you can please jump back on and share your video. Really, from Singapore Airlines, I'd love to get your perspective on the experience in engaging startups. You've been doing this for quite some time now. How do you see startups preparing themselves for commercialization and implementation of their solutions in working with an airline as noteworthy and reputable as yours?
Sure, Van. I will try to ask this question, to answer this question. Look, first of all, I want to say I'm very impressed. I mean, Shermin shared the numbers, the figures of the ongoing program you guys are doing. I mean, we certainly know what it takes to run a program like that. So, guys, kudos. I mean, it's very, very impressive. Really looking forward to the outcome and to the gems that you uncovered through this program. Very excited. So, really happy to be part of that and to be partner. Look, I mean, first of all, the thing I want to clarify and say upfront is for the audience, some people might be thinking, given what's happening with the COVID situation, that airlines and SIA in particular is like reducing, the intensity and decreasing the ambition, when it comes to moving forward with innovation. And that actually, it's exactly the opposite which is happening. My team has never been that busy. We are working like weekends, late nights to really move forward, accelerate, digitization, and engage even more with startups that we ever done it before. And in particular, when it comes to new businesses, new potential businesses, and you can imagine, right? So in order to explain how a startup, because I guess that's your question, how can a startup be successful in engaging with a company like SIA, right? So I will maybe describe very simplify the process, the engagement process we have with startups, right? It's in three different phases. We have a phase which we call innovate. Then we have a phase which we call accelerate. And then we have a third phase which we call a product launch or go to market, right? So I'm not going to talk about our internal engagement process because I shared about this last time we discussed together. I'm going to focus on the external engagement with startups, especially, but not only. We also engage with students, we engage with researchers, we engage with whoever wants to help us solving a problem. So when it comes to innovate, we are running a program which is App Challenge. So App Challenge is could be described as a hackathon, if you will. Probably more modest than the one you guys are running for this program, but we're looking at like 500 startups selected, on a yearly basis, out of which we will have 12 finalists and maybe 4 or 5 startups which we'll engage with further down the road. Okay, so it's a tough program. It's not easy. I mean, it's a 1% or a 4 to 5%, sorry, success rate. So it's a tough program, and I can explain why it's tough. And then we have the acceleration program. The acceleration program is a longer program. We put more resources and time. And instead of building only a prototype, which we do for the acceleration phase, and acceleration is basically trying to get the leadership to understand what we're trying to achieve, right? What's the outcome we're looking at? And every app challenge, we're gonna have the CEO and the senior leadership sitting front row and listening to every single presentation. And it makes my job much easier, because when you have the leadership engaged, it's actually fantastic to really get the entire company to support. So this is the prototyping stage, which is really getting the leadership to relate and to connect to the idea. Then we have the acceleration phase, which is eventually when we want to move to build a proof of concept or something which is going to be a solution in production to a limited scale, but still in production. We are looking at somehow a minimum viable solution, if you will, can describe. We use the lean startup methodology to get this built. And this is a program which runs from 3 to 6 months or sometime more if we need more time. And this is a program which where the startups is actually going to build a solution, in the ground with us and in partnership with our business units. Right? And if this is successful, eventually, just to give you a few numbers here again, I just asked my team to share the numbers today for you guys. So this is really fresh from the oven. We have for the last acceleration program, 120 startups engaged with us. Out of which 12 made it to the shortlist, and 4 of them made it to the finale. So again, it's a tough program. The reason why it's tough and the reason why some startups succeed is essentially due to the fact that this is an end-to-end, it's a programmatic way of getting to know each other, right? Because what matters is, and we've seen this too many times, and I'm sure other guys in charge of corporate innovation could share the same. Many startups, and I've been there, I've been myself, in the shoes of the entrepreneur. So I have no shame sharing about that because I've done the same mistakes, right? We come and we talk about ourselves, right? How great we are, how great the team, our investors, our board of investor is the best in the world, our technology is so much better, etc. That's the way you're going to sell yourself as an entrepreneur and as a startup. The problem with this is a bit like, sorry for the image, but it's a bit like getting on a date with a beautiful lady, and talking about yourself all night long, right? You're gonna fall short, right? Because you know nothing about her. She didn't have any opportunity to share about her. And if you look at SIA as a very elegant and desirable and classy lady, you're gonna have to put some effort, to get eventually to marry her, because all the purpose of this is eventually to have either a commercial partnership or a venture. Because the last phase I described was the launch, which is either an investment program or either a commercial partnership on a multi-year agreement, right? So we are very serious about it. We don't engage with startups just for like a touch and go way or like let me see if I can invest. No, we're gonna really get in a process of getting to know each other, because what matters really, Van, is whether the team can be successful working together or not. But at the end of the day, it's not about having the greatest technology. It's about really having the desire and the will to build something together. And that's where my advice and my kind of little trick to startups willing to work with SIA is really about show that you care, show that you really want to connect with us, with our teams, show empathy, and show resilience and consistency. That's very important, because it's not gonna be a short like touch and go like kind of thing. It's gonna be a few months engagement. And we are looking very, very closely at, the fit, the kind of the way we kind of build the personal relationship with the team that we're working with, etc., right? So this chemistry is a very important element. So that's what I can share with you to kind of keep it simple and try to bring the main points, right?
I outrageously resonate with that. And whether it is relationships or building a company, I agree. Self-awareness is a critical attribute in a lifetime of happiness, whatever it is. So thank you for sharing that analogy. Also, thank you for sharing a little bit more on the insights on sort of the internal governance that people may not be privy to that you have to overcome. And I think that's extremely underappreciated. So thank you for highlighting that. Jerome, that's really, as always, really appreciate your insights and expertise in this domain. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man.
Something else Jerome mentioned, I want to kind of take it back to the grassroots side in when they talked about the apps challenges and working with students. I think it's a very convenient segue now to invite Professor Lam to join us. Professor Lam, if you can please share your video. I introduced you earlier, but really maybe you can share a little bit more. I mean, I oddly had, of all people, had the opportunity to come and do a guest judging of some of the entrepreneurship that happens at NTU, but maybe for those of us that are not as familiar, can you share a little bit more about how does NTU identify collaboration with industry corporates, use cases that could be a good match for the technology research that the university is pursuing? Professor Lam, can you hear me? Mic check. Oh, maybe you might be muted.
Thanks for the questions. So at NTU, we have basically two platforms to nurture and support entrepreneurship. We're at the Nanyang Technopreneurship Center, so we look at the education and training aspects. And we also have the Intuitive, which is about the management of all the IPs owned or developed by NTU. So going back to your questions about how we work with the industries or with entrepreneurs about doing the collaborations or partnerships. So basically our setup is to support the entrepreneurship development of our faculties as well as our students. So we primarily provide education, training programs, and coaching, mentoring to our faculties, our researchers, and our students. But on the other hand, because our IPs usually are open for practitioners or for entrepreneurs or for industry players to license, so collaborators or industry practitioners who are interested in our IP and license our IP will also be parties that we will work very closely with. And of course, in terms of areas, in NTU have a large number of corp labs working on various aspects of applied and industrial research. And of course, one of the areas is air traffic management. And myself, I also have this Smart Nation Research Center. So these are areas that we are very open to collaborate with the industries, and we welcome people come to license our IPs and work with us to come to take the IP into the next level of commercialization. And also on the other hand, so that is from the angle of IP collaborations. And on the other hand, at the Nanyang Technopreneurship Center, even though I mentioned that we primarily provide educations and training and mentorships to our faculty and our students, but we also serve as a platform to build entrepreneurship ecosystems. And so other ecosystem stakeholders, whether they are angel investors, venture capital, private equity, IP lawyers, we also welcome them to be part of our platform, and we also work very closely with them. And so in terms of these ecosystems, we will also look at different verticals. So as for example, in this case of Starburst, I'll be very happy to work with you to look at the entrepreneurship ecosystems in the aviation verticals, for example. Yeah.
That's very important, I think, for a lot of people to appreciate kind of like how the technology spin-offs and the relationships that you've built there. So for those of many of you that don't know, NTU is probably one of the most reputable technical institutions that we've worked with. So thank you again for participating and joining us today. Thank you, Professor Lam. So that wraps our panel. We have just a few minutes remaining, and before I invite my business partner to provide closing remarks, we have also another friend in the industry from Boeing. Many of you may have heard of Horizon X, which is their venture capital arm. Nicola was not able to join us, had a conflict, but she was kind enough to pre-record a message that we'd like to share and play as part of our session today. So please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicola Bates from Boeing Horizon X Global Ventures, the venture capital arm of the Boeing company. Today, I want to share with you some of my thoughts on investing in aerospace and why there really is a silver lining on the COVID cloud. There can be no doubt that 2020, the commercial aviation market has seen an unparalleled near-term decline, greater than anything we've ever seen. This disruption will, no doubt, shape airlines' fleet strategies for decades to come. Yet, in our market outlook, we see the demand for air travel returning and continuing to grow, with a 3.2% growth predicted in the global fleet, and not forgetting a $3 trillion aerospace services market and a $2 trillion defense and space market. Here at Global Ventures, investing in aerospace falls into 4 focus areas: mobility transformation, space and connectivity, Industry 4.0, and digital acceleration. And the effect on each of these segments from COVID is slightly different. And our focus on each of these segments as a result of COVID will also be slightly different. So where really is the silver lining? The demand from customers for innovation, flexibility, and agility is even greater. The need for maximum capability at the lowest cost is even more essential. And where improved efficiency isn't just a nice to have, but key to commercial viability. And now, sustainability is an absolute requirement. So why startups? Through our portfolio, we saw an awesome response to the pandemic. Companies pivoting to make face shields, releasing team members to reserve military duty. And even through our UK Accelerator, we had a team that stepped up to support the UK Ventilator Challenge to ensure the NHS had all the capability that it would need in the months ahead. We also have teams like Circular, supporting the manufacturing industry to reduce the carbon footprint of products by tracking the supply chain and helping OEMs simply make greener choices. Seeing how our portfolio has adapted and thrived this year really has been inspiring. The startup ecosystem for aerospace is vibrant and growing. They're helping us to find new ways of working and to meet the challenges from our customers and the flying public. So the silver lining for me is really that in times of adversity, the real entrepreneurs will thrive. They are at their best when faced with a challenge. And what a challenge to make aerospace leaner and greener. And if you're one of those entrepreneurs, please do reach out and get in touch with us at Boeing Horizon X Global Ventures. Thank you.
All right. So basically that's a conclusion of all of the various participants. But before we close, I'd like to invite the CEO of Starburst, Francois Chopard, my prestigious colleague, to join us and share his screen. And please share a little bit more about maybe some final remarks around how you see kind of what's next for us, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Good night, Vance. Good morning to the Europeans. I'm glad to conclude that incredible panel and discussions and keynotes. First, I want to thank my team for organizing that part of the conference and that aerospace track. It's really great, and it was part of the vision to have that global organizations with Van in LA, myself right now in Paris, our team in Singapore, Eric, one of our senior advisor in Houston. So that global presence that's helped us identify key startups from around the world and bringing them where innovation is needed. So thank you. Second, I want to thank all the panelists that were part of that amazing discussions. It's great to partner with the best, and it's been a pleasure to be surrounded by people from Horizon X at Boeing, from Cockpit at El Al, Saffron Venture, but thank you, Jérôme, from Singapore Airlines. Chu Ming from ESG Enterprise Singapore has been an amazing support to us, building Starburst in Singapore ecosystem and helping us resonate into the entire Asian markets. And that's the great thing when you work with the best partners, with the best clients, with the best suppliers, with the best startups. Even in really tough time like we are going through right now, you still keep working, maintain the relationship, work on disruptive solutions, worked on how to solve problem, whether everything is crashing around you or whether everything goes well. That's what it means, working with the best, working with partners. And I encourage all the startups trying to enter that ecosystem. That's, first of all, you need to give the best of yourself, be the best at what you do, be the most disruptive, the most thoughtful, develop the best vision as you can, and then work with the best. Even in that crazy pandemic time, we've seen most of the airline becoming silent, disappearing from our radar or our conversations. But when you work with the best, and since the beginning, we decided that Singapore would be the our champion for aviation. Even though we work in aviation, space, and defense, we always knew when we started Starburst that we wanted to do something on aviation in Singapore and nowhere else. And after creating Starburst in Paris, having Van joining me to develop the US, I really wanted to set up shop in Singapore to develop our aviation practice. And when I moved 4 years ago in Singapore, got my employment pass and spent a couple of years there, even though we didn't succeed directly, but it helped us set the grounds, put a foot in that ecosystem, that amazing ecosystem to be where we are right now. And so working with the best partners, being focused, knowing what you want to achieve and where you want to go, sticking to it, whether it's easy or hard, and most of the time it's hard. But I'm really glad that all these efforts have paid out and to be where we are right now. Again, aviation is a difficult sector. Most of the airlines are struggling, but what we can see is that if you look at passenger traffic in China, it's above what it was last year. If you look at the internal traffic, passenger traffic in the US, it's between 50 to 60% back to normal. We've seen the first vaccine, as Nicholas from Boeing was saying, being implemented 2 days ago in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Biden in the US promised 100 million doses for the first 100 days. So even though we're struggling and it's hard right now, we know that the end of the pandemic will happen soon. And so we are really, as Starburst, part of the ecosystem, trying to do our best to support startups, making them succeed, connecting them to the best players. And we are really happy to partner with the best, with Singapore Airlines, SATS, we're talking about the labs between the CAAS and Thales, doing disruption into the air traffic management, working with ground handlers like SATs to facilitate innovations around the airport. We are looking at more partners, but we are already very excited to work with these amazing, thoughtful leaders looking for disruptions, and looking to improve what can be improved even during these difficult times. So thanks again, Enterprise Singapore and Shuming, for your trust. Thanks for all our corporate partners. Thanks to that, very interesting discussion to what next and what needs to be done to succeed in the aviation and air travel industry. And thanks to my colleague and team. Thanks to Julius, Sheila, and Jonathan in Singapore for that amazing work, and keep working very hard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francois. So as a reminder to everyone, if you do want to get involved, if you do want to learn more about our Aviation Accelerator program, go to our website, aviation-accelerator.com. Thank you to all those who joined us, and please join the Starburst booth at the Switch Transport and Logistics building to find out more about our activities. Thank you to our research partners and our investor friends, our corporate industry partners, and more of you that want to continue to get involved and participate and learn about where the investment opportunities are. We'll be continuing to provide more information around the program, and we'll be making announcements soon. So please reach out to the Starburst team if you need anything. Assessments and evaluation processes are still ongoing, but we will provide an update pretty quickly. So with that, it's officially a wrap, and a minute after our designated time, we'll look forward to following up with you soon and seeing you online. Thank you, everyone.